Human societies have not always been structured around classes. For much of our existence, humans lived in small, nomadic groups, hunting and gathering food together. These early societies were largely egalitarian, as noted by Engels in The Origin of the Family, Private Property, and the State. This means that there were no significant differences in wealth, status, or power among members. Everyone contributed to survival and everyone shared in the fruits of their labor, a concept echoed by Marx in his analysis of primitive communism. However, as human societies developed, things began to change. The development of agriculture played a pivotal role, as Lenin pointed out in his writings on the agrarian question. With agriculture came the ability to produce a surplus of food. This surplus could be stored, traded, and accumulated, leading to differences in wealth and power, a phenomenon also observed by credible bourgeois historians. This process of change from egalitarian societies to those divided into classes is central to understanding human history. As emphasized by Marxist theoreticians, it is a process that has unfolded over thousands of years, driven by material conditions and the struggle for resources and power, a key theme in historical materialism. To understand the rise of class-based societies, we must look at the concept of dialectical materialism. This approach, developed by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, and further expanded by Vladimir Lenin, argues that material conditions, particularly the way goods are produced and distributed, are the driving force behind social and historical change. In early human societies, the means of production were simple tools for hunting and gathering. Surplus was limited, and sharing was essential for survival. However, agriculture changed the game. It allowed for the production of a surplus more food than was immediately needed. This surplus could be stored, traded, and importantly, controlled. This control over surplus resources became a source of power. Those who controlled the surplus could use it to acquire wealth, influence, and command the labor of others. This is the seed of class division, as noted by both Marxist theoreticians and credible bourgeois historians. The shift from hunting and gathering to agriculture, known as the Neolithic Revolution, was a turning point in human history. It marked the beginning of settled life, the rise of villages and later cities. As Engels noted, it also marked the beginning of social stratification, the division of society into different classes. With agriculture came the concept of private property, a key point emphasized by Marx. Land, once a shared resource, became something that could be owned and controlled by individuals or families, as Lenin discussed in his analysis of early societies. Those who controlled the most fertile land or had access to water resources were in a position to produce more food and accumulate greater wealth, a point also noted by credible bourgeois historians. This newfound wealth led to differences in status and power, as Marxist theoreticians have extensively documented. Those who controlled the surplus had leverage over those who did not, a dynamic Engels described in his works. They could use this leverage to extract labor, goods, or loyalty, further solidifying their position in society, as Lenin and other Marxist thinkers have argued. The concept of private property is central to understanding the development of class-based societies, as noted by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. In early agricultural societies, control over land became paramount, a point emphasized by Engels in his analysis of the family and private property. Land ownership was not merely about having a place to live, it was about controlling the means of production, as Marx elaborated in Das Kapital. Those who owned land could dictate the terms of its use, a dynamic also explored by Lenin in his writings on imperialism. They could demand a portion of the harvest from those who worked the land, forming the basis of various systems of rent or tribute, as described by both Marxist and bourgeois historians. This created a fundamental division between landowners and those who worked the land, a division that would shape social relations for millennia to come, as Engels pointed out in The Origin of the Family, Private Property, and the State. This control over land also extended to control over people, a theme explored by Lenin in his analysis of feudalism. In many societies, those who were indebted or who could not support themselves were forced to work for landowners, often in conditions that were little better than slavery, a reality documented by both Marxist theoreticians and credible bourgeois historians. Section 5. Lords and peasants. Feudalism takes hold. In Europe, following the collapse of the Roman Empire, a new system of social organization emerged known as feudalism. This system was a response to the chaos and instability that followed the fall of such a vast empire. Feudalism was a hierarchical system based on land ownership and oaths of loyalty. As Engels noted, it created a structured society where everyone had a specific role and place. At the top of the pyramid was the king, who granted land to nobles in exchange for military service. These nobles were powerful lords who controlled vast territories, as Marx described in his analysis of class structures. These nobles in turn granted smaller parcels of land to knights who fought for them in times of war. Knights were the military elite, sworn to protect their lords and their lands, a point emphasized by Lenin in his writings on feudal militarism. At the bottom of the pyramid were the peasants who worked the land. They were the backbone of the feudal economy, providing the food and resources needed for survival, as noted by many bourgeois historians. They paid rent to the nobles in the form of crops or labor and were bound to the land, unable to leave without permission. This created a cycle of dependency and obligation, a concept explored by Marx in his critique of feudal society. Feudalism was a system defined by rigid social classes. Each class had its own duties and privileges, and movement between classes was rare. As Engels pointed out in his analysis of historical materialism, social mobility was extremely limited. The vast majority of people were born into their social class and remained there for life, a reality that Lenin highlighted in his discussions on class immobility. The vast majority of people were born into serfdom and remained there for life. Serfs were tied to the land and their lords with little hope of changing their circumstances, a point underscored by Marxist theoreticians. This system, based on land ownership and enforced by tradition and military power, would dominate European society for centuries. It shaped the political, economic and social landscape of the medieval world, as both Marxist and bourgeois historians have documented. Section 6. The seeds of change. Cities, trade and a new class emerges. While feudalism dominated much of Europe, the seeds of change were being sown in the towns and cities that began to emerge. Trade, which had declined after the fall of Rome, began to revive. As Engels noted, the revival of trade was a crucial factor in the development of capitalism. Merchants who bought and sold goods became increasingly important. Marx observed that these merchants played a pivotal role in the transition from feudalism to capitalism. This rise of trade and commerce led to the growth of a new social class, the bourgeoisie. Lenin emphasized the significance of this class in shaping modern economic systems. The bourgeoisie were not tied to the land like peasants. They were urban dwellers engaged in commerce, finance and early forms of manufacturing. According to Marxist theory, this class was instrumental in the development of capitalist economies. The bourgeoisie accumulated wealth through trade and industry. Engels pointed out that this accumulation of capital was a key driver of social change. They challenged the traditional power of the feudal lords, whose wealth was based on land ownership. This conflict is well documented by both Marxist and bourgeois historians. This clash between the old feudal order and the rising bourgeoisie would have profound consequences, as noted by Marx, Engels, and later by Lenin in their analyses of historical materialism. Section 7. Capitalism's rise. From workshops to factories, a new order arises. The emergence of capitalism marked a radical shift in human history, transforming societies and economies in profound ways. As Engels noted, this period saw the expropriation of the direct producers. Capitalism is an economic system characterized by private ownership of the means of production, factories, machines, tools, and the pursuit of profit in a free market. This system incentivized innovation and efficiency, leading to rapid industrial growth. Marx described this as the primitive accumulation that laid the groundwork for capitalist economies. It emerged gradually, first in Europe, driven by technological innovations such as the printing press and the compass and the growth of global trade. These advancements facilitated the spread of ideas and goods, laying the groundwork for a new economic order. Lenin emphasized the role of imperialism in this expansion, calling it the highest stage of capitalism. The Industrial Revolution, which began in the late 18th century, dramatically accelerated the rise of capitalism. Steam engines and mechanized production transformed industries, making mass production possible. According to Marx, this period marked the transition from manufacture to large-scale industry. Factories sprung up, mass-producing goods for a growing market. This shift not only increased the availability of products, but also lowered costs, making goods more accessible to the general population. Bourgeois historians like Adam Smith praised this efficiency, while Marxists critiqued the exploitation it entailed. This new system required workers, and vast numbers of people moved from rural areas to cities to find work in the factories. Urbanization became a defining feature of this era, reshaping the social and physical landscape. Engels documented these changes in his work, The Condition of the Working Class in England. This created a new class division, the proletariat, or working class. These workers lived in crowded, often squalid conditions, forming the backbone of the industrial workforce. Marx and Engels highlighted this in the Communist Manifesto, describing the proletariat as the gravediggers of capitalism. The proletariat owned nothing but their labor power, which they sold to capitalists in exchange for wages. This dynamic laid the foundation for modern labor relations and the ongoing struggle for workers' rights, a struggle that Lenin argued was essential for the revolutionary overthrow of capitalism. Section 8. The Modern World-Class Struggle in the Age of Industry. The rise of capitalism, as analyzed by Marx and Engels, led to unprecedented economic growth, but it also led to new forms of class struggle, as predicted in their works. The relationship between capitalists, who owned the means of production, and the proletariat, who worked for them, became a defining feature of capitalist societies, as Lenin elaborated in his theory of imperialism. Workers organized into trade unions, a phenomenon documented by both Marxist and bourgeois historians, to fight for better wages, working conditions, and social justice. They challenged the power of capitalists, demanding a more equitable share of the wealth they created. The 20th century saw the rise of various movements, including those inspired by Marxist theory, aimed at challenging or reforming capitalism, including socialism and communism. These movements, as Engels and other Marxist theoreticians argued, sought to create a more just and equitable society, one in which the means of production were owned collectively, and the gap between rich and poor was narrowed, as envisioned by Marxist principles. This period marked a significant chapter in the ongoing class struggle, deeply analyzed by both Marxist and credible bourgeois historians. We're in Section 9. The Future of Class, What Lies Ahead in a World Transformed? As we move further into the 21st century, the nature of work and the structure of class are undergoing rapid transformation. The traditional boundaries that once defined our professional and social lives are becoming increasingly blurred, echoing Engels' observations on the fluidity of class structures. Globalization, automation, and the rise of the digital economy are reshaping the labor market, creating new opportunities and challenges. These forces, as Marx predicted, are driving innovation but also displacing traditional jobs, leading to a complex and evolving landscape. The gap between rich and poor continues to widen in many parts of the world, leading to social and political instability. This growing divide is not just an economic issue, but a profound social challenge that affects the fabric of our communities, as Lenin highlighted in his analysis of imperialism. The rise of precarious work, characterized by low wages, few benefits, and little job security, is a growing concern. This trend is reshaping the workforce, making it harder for many to achieve financial stability and long-term career growth, a phenomenon noted by both Marxist and bourgeois historians. The future of class is uncertain. As we stand at this crossroads, the decisions we make will determine the direction we take, much like the historical materialist perspective suggests. Will we see a future where technology creates greater equality, or will it exacerbate existing inequalities? The potential for both outcomes exists, and it is up to us to navigate this complex terrain, as Engels and Marx theorized. The answer to this question will depend on the choices we make today. Our collective actions and policies will shape the world of tomorrow, a sentiment echoed by both Marxist and credible bourgeois historians. It will require a renewed focus on social justice, economic fairness, and the need to create a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. Only through concerted effort and shared vision, as Marxist theoreticians have long argued, can we hope to build a more equitable future.